Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead. It's always exciting to hear about and, for that matter, to learn about new technology. And today we're going to do just that. Brian Rieck, Global Senior Product Manager for AP, joins us to talk about an industry-first all-steel swine barn. Welcome, Brian. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
So for those of you that are joining us online, we want to thank you for taking the time to tune in. And we also want to encourage you, if you have any questions, feel free to post those in the chat area there on the right of your screen. If you're joining us from social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, feel free to post your questions directly in those channels, and we will see them here in the studio. So Brian, earlier this month, AP partnered to host a tour of a new 8,500 sow complex gestation barn in South Dakota. It's the first all-steel barn to be built. Tell us about this new barn and where it's located, the materials that went into its construction. I think we might even have a few pictures here we can share.
Yep. So it's basically in eastern South Dakota, and we actually have two projects going in parallel right now in that region. So what this building is made of, the concrete foundation, obviously, right, for any building, but the differences are from the concrete up. So we supplied the building package. So that consists of structural galvanized or hot dip steel. PIR panels are insulated sidewall and ceiling panels, and then a typical roof steel for the roof structure and the trims.
So where did the idea for an all steel barn come from? I mean, it hasn't been done previously, so there must have been kind of some aha moment where you're like, hey, why don't we do this all in steel?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking with different producers or integrators over the years about this, and really the driver behind it was fire prevention, right? What can we do to avoid some of the risk on fires, because facilities keep getting larger and larger over the course of time, and so that's more to ensure and more risk for the different producers. So that's really what drove that conversation.
We always hate to see those fires. I mean, we've certainly seen them over the years. So anything to minimize that risk is always a good idea. Yeah. So there must be some, besides fire prevention, are there some other advantages that might come from an all steel structure, maybe from, say, a biosecurity standpoint or other things that I'm not thinking about here?
Yep. Absolutely. So as we started the conversation, we started to brainstorm, if you would, on other things and other features. And so it became fairly apparent to us that speed of construction was going to be another thing that was advantageous over other types of wooden structures. Basically, this steel structure is made of all U.S. steel, and it's made in our plants here in Illinois, and it's all bolt together. So it ships easily to any site. So basically flatbed trucks take it to the site, very easy to unload, crews on the ground, bolt the trusses together. They lift the trusses, and then at that point they'll put on the PIR panels, which is an insulated polyurethane panel. So it's got steel on the outsides and then special coatings for the interior for the production animals. And that gives us our insulation value. So basically on the two sites we're working on right now, we've got a 40 millimeter sidewall panel and an 80 millimeter ceiling panel. And that gives us our insulation. Some of the unique features of those PIR panels is their tongue and groove interlocking, and then they also have a foam weather stripping inside to give it that seal so that we don't have any of that outside air coming in, which is predominantly very important to a filtered type facilities, as these two are, from a biosecurity standpoint. One of the other things from biosecurity that we kind of played with, we're going to learn as we go, if you would, is the PIR panels on the ceiling allow us to walk on the ceiling. So that's something that's very unique to this structure, right? On a typical wood structure, you don't want to walk on the steel because it's just not made to support the weight of a person. With ours and this walkable ceiling, it absolutely is. So it's twofold. One, it keeps the insulation where it needs to be. Cellulose insulation tends to maybe blow around over time or settle in the walls. With these panels, it's going to stay put and maintain that R value throughout the whole surface of those panels. The other thing is like I said, this is a filtered structure, so it gives a little bit more ease of use, if you would, as far as audits and things for the filters, replacing the filters. The people that are doing that work or those inspections don't have to worry about where they're walking. They just walk wherever they want and do those duties as needed.
So then I would assume energy efficiency must be another additional advantage here, right?
Yep. So another unique thing is a lot of the ceilings and different things have a rib structure. So the ventilation, we're going to see how it performs when we get to probably next summer or maybe later this fall. But the idea is we're going to have smooth surfaces that are white, easy to clean, seal really well, and enhance the ventilation through the animal space.
So what about the ease of construction? Is it easier to construct then than say a wood structure, or is there a comparison there that we should make note of?
Yep, absolutely. The first one's always the hardest one, right? It's the learning curve. And so now we're getting into the fourth and fifth structure on the two sites. So at the end of these, we're getting our rhythm, understanding how it goes together extremely well. So that speed of assembly is absolutely showing up at this time. So depending on the size of the building, I think it reduces by at least 30% over a wood structure.
What about, I mean, are you to a point where you can talk about cost of wood versus steel? Is there a big difference there?
We can, I mean, the steel is a little more expensive, absolutely, but the total cost of ownership of these structures in the long term, I think, is much less. We don't know what the numbers look like yet for the insurance aspect of it, from basically fire prevention and weather, right? I believe this is a stronger structure for weather events than what maybe your wood structures are, for the simple fact that everything's bolted together, right? So all the trusses and everything are bolted together. So you'd really have to see a really, really bad storm to dislodge or take that structure apart.
So you mentioned insurance. Is that something that, I mean, there's got to be some education then that goes on, right? With the insurance companies, you have to say, okay, come look at this and see what it is, or is it something that over time then they become more kind of accepting of it? How does that, how do they come to those numbers?
Well, that's still a work in progress, very much so, right? There were some insurance agencies or underwriters that were at the site last week to look around and see it, with their own eyes. We've had multiple conversations as we've gone through the design phase of the different materials and what's being used. But I don't know the answer yet, but so it's going to be a little bit over time, and we'll learn more as we go.
What about, I mean, there has to be some disadvantages to all steel. Is there anything that we need to be aware of? Maybe upkeep, maybe maintenance? You sounded like lifetime. It might be actually a longer lifetime when you're using a steel building versus a wood building. But talk us through anything that, might be, say, a bit of a disadvantage.
Yep. I would tell you that probably the biggest maybe disadvantage up front is upfront capital costs, right? So it is more expensive than a wood structure, but I truly believe long-term cost of ownership will be less. The other thing that's a little bit unique that we found over the course of these projects is it's really, change is difficult, right? Because all the stuff is engineered. It's not like a wooden structure where you can put another 2x4 here or 2x4 there. So we try to minimize the amount of change once you sign a project until you build it. But as we all know, with any type of livestock project, those changes happen. So we can pivot and make it happen. It just depends on the change that's being asked for.
What about modification down the road? If a producer wants to expand or to modify the facility, easier, harder versus steel versus wood? Is there any difference there that you foresee?
I think it'd be very similar, right? The one unique thing is if you do damage a component, it's a bolt together structure. So you unbolt the damaged one and you put the new one in. So in my mind, that would be a little bit easier, but we'd want a construction professional to kind of tell us for sure. But that's how I see it.
And maybe we've talked about this already, but in terms of lifetime, or maybe it's something that has to be assessed as we go through and these buildings start to age. But do you have any idea on the difference of what the lifetime, that lifespan might be from a steel to a wood facility?
Um, Really, I mean, time will tell, right, for sure. But what I believe and what I've heard as I listen to the different experts go through the tour of the open house, that they believe this is a much longer lifespan. Basically, the steel we're using in these buildings is structural, either pre-galvanized steel for some of the formed or roll form parts, and then the stuff that's going to be in the pig area production area is going to be hot dip galvanized. So it's going to give us very good corrosion resistance to the elements.
So we're starting to use, we have been using a lot of technology in our barns today, and that requires a lot of Wi-Fi connectivity. Is connectivity more of an issue, say, in an all steel building than in your traditional wood structures, or what do we need to be aware of when it comes to that kind of thing in a steel building?
Very, very good question. Basically, my experience has been even with wooden structures, the steel and everything doesn't let the Wi-Fi signal go through. So I don't believe there's going to be much of a difference, if any, between a steel structure building and a wood structure building as far as implementing a Wi-Fi infrastructure in the animal space. You'll probably have the same amount of access points, and that system only goes so far with today's technology. So I would see them as very similar in that aspect.
And a lot depends where you're building the barn too, and how close you are to Wi-Fi. We all know those challenges. So
Sure.
now, so you have the gestation barn done, right? Or give us that overview again, because you're building a big complex there.
Right.
Walk us through where you're at, when pigs are going to be in, what you're looking at in terms of a time frame.
So on the 8500 that we toured for the open house, GDU is complete. So is the gestation. Farrowing is work in progress. So basically, they'll start populating the GDU sometime here in July.
So where can folks go to get more information? What are we looking at when they want to say, hey, I want to know the pros and the cons of steel versus wood housing? If they want to, look at some of those comparisons, where's a good place to go to get that information?
So I would direct people to their local AP dealer to start that conversation, right? Because typically they're a turnkey project, and our dealers are going to be that general contractor for the project. We supply the building package and the equipment package for those projects. So start with them. We'll definitely engage on all the different design aspects, from the building to the equipment systems, feed and vent and all that, and make it one nice, robust system that's basically designed to work together.
You had this big open house. You said you had a couple hundred, 300, 400 people there. What were like a couple of your key takeaways, those things that you heard people say that you're like, wow, this is like so exciting?
Yeah. So really, to me, the thing that probably got most people's attention and smiles on faces was when they actually got to walk up the steps into the attic, and they could actually stand on the ceiling, right? That's something that we generally don't do. And you become a little hesitant on your first step because it isn't natural. Right. And then you're seeing the structure and all the steel and how thick and robust that looks, and the bolts that are used to bolt it together. It's a little bit different than a wood structure in the fact that we've got a truss every 12 feet or 3 meters compared to about every 4 foot on a standard wood construction building.
No real difference either. It doesn't sound like, from where you can build these, in terms of from the south to the north, in terms of a certain climate or any kind of environmental conditions that the steel would not work in.
Nope. I mean, a lot of the steel structures that C-Line has designed in the past have been in other countries where wood isn't prevalent, so steel is less expensive, right? So yes, we can design it for any region, any climate. We just take that area or that climate into consideration in the design aspect of it.
Any final thoughts or comments you'd like to share, Brian, with our audience?
Over the 25 years I've worked in the swine industry, this has been one of the most exciting projects that I've been a part of. So really, to me, the smile day, or the day that I'm really going to be happy, is when we cross that finish line, we turn it over to the owners, and they start producing pigs.
Always exciting day. So I want to thank you so much today for sharing this new technology and for your insight. We appreciate you joining us.
Yep. Thank you.
Likewise, we appreciate all of you joining us. We wish you a fabulous 4th of July weekend, and we hope to see you back here on Feedstuffs 365 next Wednesday. That's July 5, when meteorologist Greg Solier from This Week in Agribusiness is going to join us with an update on what the forecast holds in store for this growing season. Is this poor air quality from the Canadian forest fires that most of us are dealing with having an impact on crop yield? Are we looking at an El Nino or a La Nina for 2023 into 2024? Lots of questions for Greg. So please stay tuned and plan to join us there. A reminder, all Feedstuffs 365 sessions are available in on-demand format on Feedstuffs 365. So you can view them at any time and share them with your fellow colleagues or others if you so desire. Until next time, for Feedstuffs 365, I'm Sarah Muirhead.